The library smelled like old leather, and something darker, something that made Olivia Brennan's pulse stutter as the Vampire King's assistant locked the door behind her and vanished without a word. She stood alone in the vast chamber, her canvas bag heavy with notebooks and recording equipment, and tried to slow her breathing. The email had been brief. Your petition is granted, midnight to dawn. Touch nothing but what you came for, signed with a single initial that looked more like a slash than a letter, 6 months of applications, 3 academic references, and a signed waiver acknowledging that the Royal Court of the Undervault accepted no responsibility for researchers who disturbed the wrong text. All for this. 12 linear feet of vampire medical codices dating back to the plague, the only collection of its kind, locked in a library that didn't appear on any map. Olivia set her bag on the reading table, the only furniture in the cavernous space, and pulled out her laptop. Her hands shook slightly. Not fear. The other thing. The thing that had brought her here in the first place. The thing her cardiologist called idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy, and her grandmother would have called a bad heart. 6 months, Dr. Reardon had said. Maybe 8 with the new medication. Maybe a year if she was very lucky and very still. Olivia wasn't interested in being still. She moved toward the shelves. The books rose 3 stories high, accessible by a spiral staircase that looked like wrought iron, but felt cold as ice. Everything here felt cold. The stone floor, the air, the profound silence that pressed against her eardrums. The only light came from electric sconces shaped like candles, their glow too white, too steady. She'd expected something gothic, something atmospheric. Instead, it felt like a tomb designed by an architect who understood that the dead didn't need warmth. The medical texts were on the 2nd level, north wall. She'd memorized the layout from a schematic included in her approval letter. Climbing the stairs made her chest ache, but she'd expected that. Everything made her chest ache now. She paused on the landing, one hand pressed to her sternum, and counted her heartbeats. They stuttered, doubled, found their rhythm again. Fine. She was fine. The codices were bound in material she didn't want to identify, their spines labeled in languages that shifted between Latin and something older, something that hurt to look at directly. She ran her finger along the shelf, looking for the volume she'd come for. Sanguinis Remedium Mortalis, Blood Cures for Mortal Ills, 14th century, possibly earlier. Referenced in exactly 3 scholarly works, none of them published after 1890. Banned from general circulation by the Blood Accords of 1923 for reasons no one would specify. Her fingers found the spine. The leather was warm. That was wrong. Everything here was cold. But the book pulsed with heat like something living, and when she pulled it free, the warmth traveled up her arm into her chest, and for one perfect moment her heart beat steady and strong and whole. Then the floor tilted and the world went away. She woke to cold, bone deep, invasive cold that felt like hands pressing her down into darkness. She tried to sit up and couldn't. Her body wouldn't respond. Panic fluttered in her throat, but even that felt distant, muted, as if she were sinking into deep water. "Don't move!" The voice came from her right, low and precise, with an accent she couldn't place. "You fainted. 40 minutes ago, possibly longer. I've sent for a doctor." Olivia turned her head. The movement took enormous effort. A man sat beside her, or something shaped like a man. White hair pulled back severely from a face too perfect to be human, skin so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light, eyes the color of winter ice. He wore a black suit that looked like it cost more than her entire doctoral program, and his hand rested on top of hers where it lay on the floor. His hand was colder than the stone. "You're the king," she whispered. "Casimir Corvinius." He didn't move. His pale eyes tracked her face with absolute focus. "And you are Olivia Brennan, doctoral candidate, Harvard medical history, currently dying of heart failure and looking for something you shouldn't attempt to use even if you found it." Her breath caught. "You read my research proposal. I read everything that comes into my library. The question is why you lied on your application. You said you were researching medieval approaches to cardiovascular disease. You didn't mention you were the subject. Would you have let me in if I'd told the truth?" Something flickered across his face, too fast to read. No. Olivia closed her eyes. Her heart was doing that thing again, the arrhythmic stutter that felt like missing a step on a dark staircase. Then I'm glad I lied. Where's the book? On the table. You won't be touching it again. It's my only chance. It's a death sentence. His hand tightened fractionally on hers. The cures in that text require vampire blood administered in quantities that would kill a human before the healing could take hold. They were designed for transitional candidates, not mortals. Using them without a complete transformation would stop your heart in minutes. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked. His face was expressionless, but his hand hadn't moved from hers, and he'd stayed. For 40 minutes he'd stayed, when he could have left her for his staff to find. How do you know I haven't already decided to transition? Because you wrote your dissertation proposal on the ethics of informed consent in experimental medicine. Becoming a vampire isn't a cure, Miss Brennan. It's an entirely different condition. It's also not death, isn't it? For the first time, emotion crossed his face, something old and tired. You'd give up sunlight, food, the warmth of your own blood, every human connection you've ever had because we don't integrate, we imitate. You'd trade 6 months of authentic life for centuries of magnificent isolation. That's not survival. That's cowardice. The words should have stung. Instead, Olivia felt something unlock in her chest. You've thought about this before. Casimir was silent for a long moment. Then, I've lived 3,000 years. I've thought about everything before. But this specifically, someone asked you to turn them. Many people have asked, and you said no. I always say no. His jaw tightened. The transformation isn't a gift. It's a breaking and a rebuilding, and what comes out the other side isn't the same person who went in. They have the same memories, the same face, but the warmth is gone, the human spark. I won't be responsible for snuffing that out, not for anyone. Olivia studied his face, the perfect, austere beauty of it, the absolute control, and underneath, something raw. Who did you lose? His eyes snapped to hers. For a heartbeat, she thought he'd pull away, leave her on the cold floor, and vanish into whatever shadows kings hid in. Instead, he said very quietly, his name was Michael, my closest friend, my brother in everything but blood. He was human, a scholar like you, too curious for his own good like you. He caught fever in winter in the days before antibiotics, before we understood infection. I was away, settling a dispute at the northern border. By the time I returned, he was dying. Did he ask you to turn him? He begged me. Casimir's voice was flat, but his hand was ice-tight on hers. I refused. I told him the same things I told you, that it wasn't a cure, that he'd lose himself, that I wouldn't damn him to this existence. I held his hand while the fever took him. I told him he was brave. I lied and said it would be quick. He paused. It wasn't quick. It took 3 days, and I stayed, because leaving him alone at the end would have been a greater cruelty than anything the fever could do. Olivia's throat ached. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choice. I've made it 100 times since, every time someone I care for grows old and dies. It's the price of living among mortals. But I swore that night I'd never leave someone alone in their dying again, not if they wanted me there. Is that why you stayed with me? He looked down at their joined hands. You weren't dying. You fainted. There's a difference. Not much of one in my case. Then you should be home, resting, spending time with people who matter to you, not breaking into forbidden libraries looking for impossible cures. Olivia laughed, and the sound came out bitter. I don't have people who matter. I have colleagues who'll publish my research notes after I'm gone and a mother who sends quarterly emails asking if I've met anyone nice. I have 6 months and a list of things I never got to finish. This library was on that list. Casimir's expression shifted. You came here to die. I came here to try not to. There's a difference. She squeezed his hand, or tried to. Her fingers had gone numb. I know the text is dangerous. I know the odds. But doing nothing is also a choice, and I'm so tired of choosing to do nothing. Every day I wake up and decide whether to take my medication, Whether to avoid stairs, whether to cancel plans because I'm too weak to leave my apartment. I'm 29 years old and I'm already living like I'm dead. So yes, I lied on my application. Yes, I came looking for something forbidden, because 6 months of trying is worth more to me than a year of giving up. Silence. Then Casimir said very softly, "You're freezing. I know." He moved so quickly she barely saw it, lifting her from the floor and settling her into his arms as he stood. He was stronger than anything human, and the cold of him seeped through her clothes, but there was something steadying about it too, like being held by winter itself. He carried her to the reading table and set her down carefully in the single chair, then shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It didn't help. The cold was coming from inside her now, spreading from her chest outward. "The doctor should have been here by now," Casimir said. He pulled out a phone, sleek and modern and incongruous in this ancient space, and typed something with sharp, angry movements. "I don't need a doctor." Olivia's voice sounded distant even to her own ears. "I need the book. The book will kill you. So, we're sitting here." Casimir looked at her, really looked, and she saw the moment he understood. Saw the calculation behind those winter eyes, the assessment. Her lips were probably blue by now. Her hands definitely were. The cold meant her heart was failing, struggling to push blood to her extremities. She'd be unconscious again within minutes. "There's another option," he said slowly. Turning. "No, petitioning the eldest court for a sanctioned healing." Olivia blinked. "I don't understand." Casimir set his phone down. "The blood laws forbid using vampire cures on humans because the risk is too great and the outcomes too unpredictable. But the laws also allow for exceptions in cases of extraordinary circumstance, if the eldest court agrees to sanction the attempt. It's rarely granted. The last successful petition was in 1847, but it's possible. What would that involve? A formal hearing, medical testimony, proof that you understand the risks, and someone willing to administer the cure and take responsibility for the outcome." His eyes held hers. "I could petition on your behalf." "Why would you do that?" "Because you remind me of someone who deserved better than what I gave him." Casimir's voice was steady, but something moved behind his eyes. "And because you're right. Choosing to try is worth more than choosing to surrender." Olivia's heart stuttered, caught, raced. What are the chances they'd approve it? Small. The court is conservative. They'll argue that setting precedent endangers the blood laws, that your condition is natural and therefore outside our jurisdiction, that humans die and we don't interfere. He paused. "But I've sat on the eldest court for 1,000 years. I know how they think. I know what arguments might sway them. And if they say no, then you have the same 6 months you started with. And if they say yes, but the cure doesn't work?" Casimir's face was grave. "Then you die having tried. That's what you wanted." It was. God help her, it was exactly what she wanted. But looking at him, at the careful hope in his ancient eyes, she understood there was more at stake here than her survival. "You'd be breaking 1,000 years of precedent. The court might strip your title, exile you. They might. Why would you risk that for someone you just met?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because Mikhail died, begging me for a chance I was too afraid to give him. I told myself I was protecting him, preserving his humanity. But the truth is, I was protecting myself from the guilt of failing. I chose the law over his life and I've regretted it every day since." His hand found hers again, cold and steady. "I won't make that choice again. Not for you. Not for anyone." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't want you to damn yourself for me." "Then don't die." His grip tightened. "Fight. Let me fight for you. Let this mean something." She should say no. Should tell him to take her home, call her a cab, forget this whole night. But the cold was in her bones now, and her vision was starting to blur at the edges, and the thought of giving up, of spending her last months in slow decline, felt like a betrayal of everything she'd ever worked for. "Okay," she whispered. "Petition the court." Casimir's face transformed. Not quite a smile, but something close. Relief, Maybe. Purpose. He pulled out his phone again and made a call, speaking in a language Olivia didn't recognize, rapid and commanding. Then he hung up and looked at her. The doctor is here. She'll stabilize you and set up monitoring. The court convenes at sunset tomorrow. I'll file the petition tonight. That fast? We move quickly when we choose to. He touched her face, his fingers ice against her skin. Stay with me, Olivia Brennan. Don't fade yet. I'm not done with you. She wanted to say something clever, something brave. Instead, she just nodded and let the darkness take her again. She woke in a bedroom she didn't recognize, tucked into sheets so soft they felt like water. Morning light filtered through heavy curtains, weak and gray. Her chest ached, but the bone-deep cold was gone, replaced by the muted warmth of blankets and the steady beep of a heart monitor beside the bed. A woman sat in a chair near the window reading a book. Vampire, definitely. The same pale skin, the same preternatural stillness. She looked up when Olivia stirred and set the book aside. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Celeste Thorne. How do you feel? Like I fainted in a library and woke up in a vampire's guest room. Celeste's mouth quirked. Accurate summary. You're in the residential wing of the Undervault, under His Majesty's protection. You've been unconscious for 14 hours. Did he is the petition filed and accepted for hearing. The court convenes at sunset, 6 hours from now. Celeste stood and moved to the bed, checking the monitors with practiced efficiency. Your heart is stable for the moment. I've given you medication to regulate the rhythm, but it's a temporary measure. Days, not weeks. Olivia's stomach dropped. That's faster than my doctor said. Your doctor didn't see you nearly code on a library floor. The stress accelerated the deterioration. Celeste's eyes were kind but firm. I won't lie to you, Miss Brennan. You're dying quickly. If the court denies the petition, you have perhaps a week. Maybe less. And if they approve it, then we attempt the cure, which has a 60% fatality rate even under ideal conditions, which these are not. So my options are definitely die or probably die. Yes. Olivia laughed and it came out shaky. Great. Wonderful. Good to have clarity. Celeste sat on the edge of the bed. His Majesty believes you're strong enough to survive the cure. He doesn't say that lightly. Casimir has seen empires rise and fall. He doesn't invest hope in lost causes. He barely knows me. He knew you well enough to stay with you all night rather than leave you alone. He knew you well enough to risk his crown for a chance to save you. Celeste's voice was soft. That's not nothing, Miss Brennan. For someone like Casimir, that's everything. Olivia looked down at her hands. They were pale but no longer blue, hooked up to an IV that dripped clear fluid. Tell me about him. What do you want to know? Why is he alone? 3,000 years, and he's the Vampire King, and he spends his nights in a library holding the hand of a dying stranger. That doesn't make sense. Celeste was quiet for a moment. Casimir is alone because he chooses to be. After Mikhail died, he withdrew from mortal society. Built this court, established the blood laws, became exactly what vampires needed. A strong, just, uncompromising ruler. But he stopped letting himself care, stopped allowing humans close. He told himself it was protection, for them and for him. But really it was grief. She paused. Last night was the first time in 800 years I've seen him choose differently. Because I'm dying. Because you're fighting. Casimir respects strength. He responds to it. And you, Miss Brennan, are possibly the stubbornest human I've ever met, and I've met quite a few. Olivia felt heat rise to her face. I just don't want to give up. I know. Neither does he. That's why this might actually work. A knock at the door interrupted them. Celeste called, "Enter." And Casimir stepped into the room. He'd changed clothes, trading the formal suit for dark trousers and a white shirt that made his pale skin look even more otherworldly. His hair was still pulled back, his face still unreadable, but his eyes went directly to Olivia with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're awake," he said. "Apparently." Olivia tried to sit up and Celeste helped her, adjusting the pillows. "Thank you. For the petition. For all of this." Casimir moved closer. "Don't thank me yet. The court hasn't ruled. But you think they will? Approve it, I mean. I think we have a chance. He glanced at Celeste. Give us a moment. The doctor nodded and slipped out. Casimir took her seat, settling into the chair with the fluid grace of something not quite human. For a long moment, he just looked at Olivia, his expression unreadable. You're afraid, he said finally. Terrified. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. The court will ask you questions about your condition, your motivations, your understanding of the risks. They'll try to find weakness, doubt, anything that suggests you're not capable of informed consent. You need to be strong, certain. If they sense hesitation, they'll deny the petition. What should I say? The truth. That you're dying. That you want to live. That you understand the cure might kill you and you're choosing it anyway. His eyes held hers. Can you do that? Olivia thought about her apartment, the stack of unfinished manuscripts on her desk, the list of places she'd never see and things she'd never do. Thought about her mother's emails, her colleagues' careful sympathy, the way her body had become a prison. Yes. Then there's something else you need to know. Casimir's voice dropped. If the court approves the petition, I'll be the one administering the cure. My blood, my responsibility. If you survive, you'll be bound to me. Bound how? The cure requires regular infusions of vampire blood for the first year to stabilize the changes. You'd need to stay close, here in the undervault, under my protection. He paused. And there will be changes, even if you don't fully transform. Increased strength, sensitivity to sunlight, a connection to me you'll feel in your blood. It's not full transformation, but it's not entirely human either. You'd exist in between. For how long? The changes stabilize after a year. After that, you'd be functionally human again, but longer lived, healthier. Your heart would be whole. Olivia absorbed this, and the connection to you would remain, faintly. You'd always be able to sense me, and I you. It's not control. You'd still have your free will, but you'd never be entirely separate from me again. That sounds like a leash. It's protection. Casimir's voice was firm. The cure is volatile. Without the bond, your body might reject the changes and kill you months or years down the line. The connection keeps you stable, keeps you alive, and keeps me close to you. Yes, he didn't flinch from it. I won't apologize for that. If I'm risking everything to save you, I want to be certain you survive. Olivia should have been angry, should have felt trapped. Instead, she felt something else, something warm and terrifying and entirely inappropriate given the circumstances. You really think this will work? I think you're strong enough to make it work. Casimir reached out and took her hand, his cold fingers wrapping around hers. I think you're brave and stubborn and too clever for your own good, and I think if anyone can survive the impossible, it's you. You don't even know me. I know you lied to get into my library. I know you chose research over rest on what might be your last night alive. I know you looked me in the eye and asked for the forbidden text even when you knew it could kill you. His grip tightened. That's enough. Olivia's heart did that stuttering thing again, but this time it didn't feel like dying. It felt like something else entirely. Casimir, don't. His voice was rough. Don't say anything you'll regret when you're thinking clearly. You're sick and scared, and I'm offering you hope. That's a powerful combination. It's not real. How do you know? Because I've lived 3,000 years, and I know the difference between gratitude and affection. When you're well, when you're safe, if you still feel whatever you're feeling now, we'll talk. But not before. He stood, releasing her hand. Rest. You'll need your strength for the court. He was gone before she could respond, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that made her chest ache for reasons that had nothing to do with her heart condition. The eldest court met in a chamber that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone, smooth and cold and utterly lightless, except for the pale glow of the vampires themselves. Olivia sat in a chair at the center of the room, feeling very small and very mortal, while 12 ancient vampires watched her from a semicircle of raised seats. Casimir stood to her right, formally dressed in black and silver, his face expressionless. He'd explained the protocol during the walk down. She would answer their questions truthfully and completely. She would not volunteer information. She would not show weakness. If she felt faint, she would say so immediately, because collapsing during the hearing would be grounds for automatic denial. The vampire at the center of the semicircle spoke first. She was terrifyingly beautiful, white-haired and sharp-featured, with eyes like frozen amber. Olivia Brennan, you stand before the eldest court to petition for a sanctioned healing under the blood laws. Do you understand the gravity of this request? Yes, Your Honor. Olivia's voice came out steadier than she felt. State your condition. Idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy. My heart is failing. I have days, maybe a week, before it stops entirely. And you believe vampire blood can cure this? I believe the texts suggest it's possible. The amber-eyed vampire's expression didn't change. The texts also suggest a 60% fatality rate. You understand you're more likely to die than survive? Yes. Then why request this? Why not die naturally, peacefully, surrounded by those you love? Olivia lifted her chin. Because I'm 29 years old and I'm not ready to die. Because I have work unfinished and places I haven't seen and a life I haven't lived yet. Because dying naturally doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like giving up. And I've never been very good at that. A flicker of something crossed the vampire's face. Approval, maybe. Or amusement. His Majesty has volunteered to administer the cure and accept responsibility for your survival. Do you understand what that means? He's explained the binding, the year of infusions, the changes. And you accept these terms? Yes. Why should we risk setting this precedent? Why should we endanger the blood laws for one human life? This was the question Casimir had warned her about, the one that mattered. Olivia took a breath and chose her words carefully. Because the blood laws exist to protect both humans and vampires from exploitation and harm. But protection shouldn't mean abandonment. I'm not asking you to change the laws. I'm asking you to apply them as they were intended, with wisdom and compassion. If there's a chance to save a life without causing harm, isn't that exactly what the laws should allow? Silence. The 12 vampires looked at each other, some communication passing between them that Olivia couldn't read. Then the amber-eyed vampire turned to Casimir. You've been silent, Casimir. Speak now. Why does this girl matter to you? Casimir's voice was steady. Because she reminds me of someone I failed. Because she deserves a chance I was too afraid to give him. Because the laws we built were meant to prevent tragedy, not guarantee it. And if she dies during the cure? If this precedent leads to others seeking the same treatment, others who don't survive, then I'll bear that responsibility. But I won't let fear of what might happen prevent us from doing what's right. The vampire studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at Olivia. Stand. Olivia stood, swaying slightly. The room tilted and she locked her knees, refusing to fall. You're dying as we speak, the vampire said. Your heart is barely functioning. You should be in a hospital, sedated and comfortable. Instead, you're here, arguing with immortals for a chance at a cure that will probably kill you. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Probably both, Olivia admitted. The vampire's mouth curved slightly. I like her, Casimir. She's honest. She looked at the other council members. We vote. Who sanctions the healing? 8 hands rose. 4 remained down. The petition is approved. The amber-eyed vampire's voice was formal now, final. Casimir Corvinius, you are authorized to administer the cure under the old protocols. Miss Brennan, you are hereby placed under the protection of the Vampire King. The court will reconvene in 1 year to assess the outcome and determine whether this precedent should be formalized. She paused. Don't die, child. I'd hate to think we wasted a perfectly good exception on someone without the strength to use it. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Thank me by surviving. Casimir's hand found her elbow, steadying her. We begin tonight. The preparation room was smaller than the court chamber, but no less intimidating. Medical equipment Olivia didn't recognize lined the walls, and the bed at the center looked more like an operating table than anything designed for comfort. Dr. Thorne was already there, checking instruments with brisk efficiency. "Strip to your undergarments and lie down," she said without preamble. "We need to establish a baseline before we begin." Olivia did as instructed, hyper-aware of Casimir's presence, even though he'd turned away to give her privacy. The room was cold, and her hands shook as she climbed onto the table. Celeste covered her with a thin sheet and began attaching monitors, each electrode a cold point of contact. "The cure happens in stages," Celeste explained as she worked. "First infusion is the largest. It will stop your heart." "What?" "Temporarily. The vampire blood needs to rebuild the muscle, and it can't do that while your heart is struggling to beat on its own. So we stop it, let the blood work, and restart it once the initial healing is complete." She met Olivia's eyes. "You'll be conscious for part of it. It won't be pleasant." "How not pleasant are we talking?" "Imagine drowning while your entire body is on fire." Olivia swallowed hard. "Okay, great. Looking forward to it." Celeste's expression softened. "You can still refuse. No one would blame you." "I would." Olivia looked past her to where Casimir stood, his back still turned, his shoulders rigid. "I'm ready." Casimir turned. His face was carefully blank, but his eyes burned. "Celeste, leave us for a moment." The doctor hesitated, then nodded and slipped out. The door closed with a soft click. Casimir moved to the table and looked down at Olivia. "Last chance. If you have doubts, any doubts at all, tell me now." "I don't." "You should. This is going to hurt in ways you can't imagine. You're going to want to die. You might beg me to stop." "Then don't stop." His jaw tightened. "Olivia, I mean it." She reached up and caught his hand, pulling it down to rest over her heart. Through the thin sheet, she could feel the cold of him, the steady strength. "Whatever happens, don't stop. Don't let me give up. Promise me." "I promise." His voice was rough. "But you have to promise me something too." "What?" "That you'll fight, that you won't let go. I can give you the blood, but you have to do the rest. You have to want to live more than you want the pain to stop." "I do. I will." Olivia tightened her grip on his hand. "I'm not ready to leave you yet." Something cracked in his expression. "You don't even know me. I know you stayed. I know you risked everything. I know you're the first person in months who looked at me and saw something other than someone dying." She swallowed. "That's enough." Casimir bent and pressed his forehead to hers, the cold of him shocking and perfect. "Then live, Olivia Brennan. Live and give me time to know you properly." "I will." He straightened and called for Celeste. The doctor returned with a tray of instruments and a crystal vial filled with something dark and viscous. Blood, Olivia realized. Vampire blood. Casimir's blood. "Are you ready?" Celeste asked. Olivia nodded, not trusting her voice. "Then we begin." The first infusion went into her IV line, a slow, steady drip that felt like ice spreading through her veins. Olivia gasped at the cold, her body arching involuntarily. Casimir caught her hand and held it, his grip the only anchor as the world dissolved into sensation. Cold, burning cold that turned her blood to frost and her bones to ice. Her heart stuttered, fighting the invasion, and then stopped. The absence of her heartbeat was deafening. Olivia tried to breathe and couldn't, tried to scream and had no air. Panic flooded her, white-hot and absolute. She was dying, drowning, burning from the inside out, and there was no end to it, no relief, just the endless, terrible now of pain. "Stay with me." Casimir's voice cut through the agony. "Olivia, stay with me. Feel my hand. Focus on that." She focused. His hand was cold but solid, real in a way nothing else was. She held on to it like a lifeline. "Good. That's good. Now breathe. Your heart isn't beating, but your lungs still work. Breathe." She dragged in air. It burned, but it was something other than the cold. Something she could control. "Again. Keep breathing. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. She counted, lost track. Started again. Time became meaningless, measured only in breaths and the terrible cold spreading through her chest. Then warmth. Small at first, a spark in the frozen wasteland of her body. Then stronger, spreading outward from her heart like spring after winter. The vampire blood was working, rebuilding, healing. Almost there. Casimir's voice was closer now, urgent. "Come back, Olivia. Come back to me." Her heart twitched, stuttered, beat. The pain crested and broke, and she gasped, her back arching off the table as her heart found its rhythm again. Strong, steady, whole. "We have a pulse." Celeste's voice clinical and relieved. Heart rate normalizing, blood pressure rising. She's through the worst of it. Olivia opened her eyes. The room was too bright, the colors too vivid. She could hear everything, the hum of the machines, the whisper of Celeste's breath, the rustle of fabric as Casimir moved. Her skin felt new, hypersensitive, and the ache in her chest was gone. "How do you feel?" Casimir asked. "Different." Her voice sounded strange, clearer somehow. "Everything's so loud." "That will fade. Your senses are heightened from the infusion. It's temporary." He squeezed her hand. "You did it. You survived." Olivia turned her head and looked at him, really looked. She could see the individual strands of his white hair, the precise cut of his features, the way his eyes held flecks of silver in the ice blue. He was beautiful in a way that hurt. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. That was just the first infusion. You'll need 6 more over the next month, then weekly doses for the rest of the year." "Will they all be like that?" "No. The first is the worst. Your body had to be broken down before it could be rebuilt. The others will be easier." "Good." Olivia's eyes drifted closed. "Because I don't think I could survive that again." "You could." Casimir's voice was soft. "You're stronger than you know." She wanted to respond, but exhaustion pulled her under, and she surrendered to it. The next weeks blurred together in a haze of infusions and recovery. Each one was difficult, but Casimir had been right. None were as brutal as the first. Olivia's body adapted, learned to accept the vampire blood instead of fighting it. Her heart grew stronger, her stamina increased, and the changes Casimir had warned about began to manifest. Sunlight made her skin prickle uncomfortably, though it didn't burn. Rich foods turned her stomach. She could hear conversations through closed doors and see clearly in near darkness, and she could feel Casimir, a constant presence at the edge of her awareness, warm and steady like a banked fire. He visited her every evening, checking on her progress, sitting with her while Celeste administered the infusions. They talked about everything: her research, his court, the history of the Undervault, the politics of vampire society. He was brilliant and funny in a dry, cutting way that made her laugh, and he listened when she spoke like every word mattered. Olivia had never felt so seen. "Tell me about the library," she said one night, a month into her treatment. They were in her room, Casimir in his usual chair by the window, Olivia curled up on the bed with a book she wasn't reading. "What do you want to know?" "Why books? You've lived 3,000 years. You could have built anything. Museums, universities, galleries. Why a library?" Casimir was quiet for a moment. "Mikhail loved books. When he died, I inherited his collection. 23 volumes, most of them falling apart. I couldn't stand to throw them away, so I kept them. Then I added more and more. It became a way to hold on to him, I suppose. A way to preserve something he loved. The whole library is a memorial. The whole library is an obsession." He said it lightly, but there was truth underneath. I kept building it because I didn't know what else to do with the grief, and eventually it became something more. A resource, a sanctuary, a place where knowledge was preserved and protected. He paused. "It's ridiculous building a monument to one human's memory. But I've never been particularly rational where Mikhail was concerned." Olivia set her book aside. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you regret not turning him?" Casimir's face went very still. "Every day. Even though you believe transformation destroys humanity, I believe it changes people. I believe they lose something essential in the process. But Mikhail dead is worse than Mikhail changed. At least if I'd turned him, he'd still be here. We could still talk, still argue about philosophy and medicine and whether wine tastes better at sunset or midnight. His voice roughened. I chose principle over presence. I'm not sure that was the right choice. You loved him. I did, as much as someone like me is capable of love. Olivia's chest ached. Someone like you? Immortal. Removed. I've spent so many centuries distancing myself from humanity that I'm not sure I remember how to feel the way mortals do. Everything is muted, filtered through too many years of experience. You don't seem muted to me. Casimir looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. That's because you're different. How? I don't know yet. He stood and moved to the bed, sitting on the edge, close enough that she could feel the cold of him, the magnetic pull. But from the moment I found you on my library floor, something's been different. I feel things with you I haven't felt in centuries. Concern, fear, hope. He reached out and touched her face, his fingers ice against her skin. You make me want to be less careful, less distant. That terrifies me. Olivia's breath caught. Casimir, you're still recovering, still bound to me by necessity. Anything you feel for me is tangled up in gratitude and proximity. I won't take advantage of that. What if it's not gratitude? What if it's real? Then it will still be real when you're well, when you're free to leave and choose to stay anyway. His hand dropped. I can wait. I don't want to wait. Olivia. She kissed him, leaned forward and closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. He was cold, colder than anything living, but his mouth was soft and he tasted like winter and something darker, something that made her blood sing. For a heartbeat, he was still. Then he kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. It was gentle and fierce at once, restrained but barely, and when he pulled away they were both breathing hard. That was a mistake, he said. It didn't feel like one. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I'm dying a little less every day because you saved me. I'm bound to you in ways I don't fully understand. And I'm falling for you, Casimir. That's not gratitude. That's not the bond. That's just the truth. His eyes searched hers. You don't know what you're saying. I do. And I think you feel it too. I think you have since the beginning. That's why you stayed. Why you risked everything. Not just because I reminded you of Mikhail. Because I mattered. Because I matter now. Casimir closed his eyes. You do. More than you should. More than is wise. Then stop being wise. Stop protecting me from choices I want to make. Olivia took his hand and pressed it over her heart. It beat steady and strong under his palm. Feel that? That's you. You gave me that. You gave me a future. Let me spend it with you. I'm 3,000 years old, Olivia. You're 29. I've lived empires. You've barely started your life. So teach me, show me. I want to know you, all of you. The king, the scholar, the man who built a library to hold on to someone he loved. She swallowed. I want to be someone you don't want to let go of. Something broke in his expression. You already are. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his cold hands framing her face. Olivia sank into it, into him, and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Want, need, the terrible perfect certainty that this was right, that he was right, that whatever came next, they'd face it together. When they finally broke apart, Casimir rested his forehead against hers. You make me believe in impossible things. Good. You made me believe I could survive the impossible. Seems fair. He laughed, soft and genuine, and the sound filled her chest with warmth. They spent the rest of the night talking, curled together on her bed, his arms around her and her head on his chest, where a heartbeat should have been. He told her about the early days of the Undervault, the wars he'd fought and the treaties he'd brokered. She told him about her research, the dissertation she'd never finished, the dreams she'd thought were lost. I'll help you finish it, Casimir said. When you're well, you'll have access to the full library, everything I've collected, 3,000 years of medical history at your fingertips. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm not very good at romance, it's been a while. How long's a while? 800 years, give or take. Olivia pulled back to look at him. You haven't been with anyone since Mikhail died? There have been people. Brief encounters. Nothing that mattered. His hand traced patterns on her shoulder. I didn't want anything that mattered. Caring means eventual loss, and I'd had enough of that. And now? Now I'm apparently willing to risk it again. He sounded surprised by his own admission. You've made me reckless, Olivia Brennan. I'm a bad influence. The worst. But he was smiling when he said it. The months passed in a blur of treatment and recovery and stolen moments. Olivia's infusions decreased in frequency, her body stabilizing as the vampire blood integrated with her system. By the 6th month, she was nearly herself again, just stronger, sharper, more alive than she'd ever been. Casimir took her to parts of the undervault she'd never seen, the great hall where the vampire court assembled, the gardens that existed entirely underground, sustained by artificial light and ancient magic. He introduced her to his people, and if they were surprised to see their king with a human, they were too polite to say so. Olivia finished her dissertation with Casimir's help, drawing on sources no human scholar had ever accessed. It was brilliant, groundbreaking, a complete reimagining of medieval medical practice through the lens of vampire knowledge. Her committee would either acclaim it or think she'd lost her mind. She didn't particularly care which. On the first anniversary of her collapse in the library, the eldest court reconvened to assess the results of the sanctioned healing. Olivia stood before them again, this time with Casimir at her side instead of behind her, and answered their questions with confidence. Your heart is fully healed, the amber-eyed vampire asked. Yes, Your Honor. No symptoms, no deterioration. Dr. Thorne says I'm healthier than I've ever been. And the changes? How have you adapted? They were difficult at first, but I've adjusted. The sensitivity to sunlight is manageable, and the heightened senses are actually useful for my research. And the bond to His Majesty? Olivia glanced at Casimir. He looked calm, but she could feel his tension through the connection between them. It's stable, strong. I don't experience it as a burden. The vampire's eyes gleamed. How do you experience it? As a gift. Olivia's voice was steady. I was dying alone. Now I'm alive, and I'm not alone anymore. That's worth whatever changes came with it. You speak of the bond with affection. Some would call that Stockholm Syndrome, confusing dependence for love. Some would be wrong. Olivia lifted her chin. I know the difference. I'm a scholar. I've spent my entire adult life learning to think critically, to question my assumptions. I've questioned this, examined it from every angle, and the conclusion I keep reaching is that I love him, not because I'm bound to him, not because I'm grateful, because he's brilliant and kind and impossibly stubborn, and he makes me want to be braver than I am. Silence fell over the chamber. Then the amber-eyed vampire smiled. Well, that's unambiguous. She looked at Casimir. And you? Do you return her affection? Casimir's hand found Olivia's. Completely. Then the court finds the healing a success. The precedent is approved for future petitions, to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. She stood. Congratulations, Casimir. You've given us hope that the blood laws can evolve without being abandoned. That's no small thing. The formal hearing dissolved into something warmer, the other council members coming forward to congratulate them. Olivia shook hands and accepted well wishes in a daze, barely able to process that it was over. She was well. She was free. She had a future. Casimir pulled her aside as the chamber emptied. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. He led her through the undervault's winding corridors, up flights of stairs she'd never climbed, until they reached a door she didn't recognize. He opened it and gestured her through. Olivia stepped into the library and stopped. It was dawn. Pale light filtered through the tall windows, turning the dust motes to gold. The shelves glowed in the soft illumination, and the whole space felt transformed, warm and alive, in a way she'd never seen. You opened the shutters, she said. I wanted you to see it like this. the way it was meant to be seen. Casimir moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. "A year ago tonight, you fainted right here. I found you on the floor holding that damned book, your hands so cold I thought you were already gone. But you stayed. I stayed, all night, holding your hand, refusing to leave even when dawn came and the shutters started to burn." He looked down at their joined hands. "Do you know why?" "Because of Michael. Partly, but also because from the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. A fighter. Someone who refused to surrender even when surrender made sense. I couldn't let that light go out." Olivia's throat ached. "And now? Now I want to watch that light burn for as long as you'll let me. I want to show you everything I've seen in 3,000 years. I want to argue with you about medieval medicine and listen to you curse at primary sources. I want to wake up every evening and know you're there." He turned to face her fully. "I want you to stay, Olivia. Not because the bond requires it, not because you're still healing, but because you want to. Because this is where you choose to be." "I do choose it. I choose you." Olivia reached up and touched his face, the cold, perfect lines of it. "I love you, Casimir. I think I have since you held my hand in the dark and promised not to leave." He kissed her then, soft and sure, and the dawn light wrapped around them like a blessing. When they finally broke apart, Casimir said, "The sun doesn't burn you anymore. The changes have stabilized. You could walk outside, see the garden in daylight. Will you come with me?" "I can't, not in direct sun." "Then we'll go at sunset." Olivia laced her fingers through his. "I don't need daylight if it means being without you." "You're allowed to want both." "I know, but I want you more." She looked around the library, at the shelves filled with knowledge and history and Casimir's long grief. "This is where it started, where you found me, where everything changed. Do you regret it? Any of it?" "Not for a second." Olivia pulled him toward the window, where the morning light pooled on the floor. She stopped just at the edge of the sunbeam and tugged him down to sit with her in the shadows. "Tell me a story, something you've never told anyone." Casimir settled beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "What kind of story?" "A happy one. Something from before the grief. I want to know what you were like when you still believed in joy." He was quiet for a long moment, and Olivia thought he might refuse. Then he began to speak, his voice soft and remembering. He told her about the early days of his turning, the wonder and terror of it, about learning to navigate a world that moved at half speed, about the first time he saw a sunrise and realized he'd never see another. Olivia listened, her head on his shoulder, and felt the bond between them pulse with warmth. This, she thought. This was what she'd been dying for. Not just more time, but time that mattered. Time spent with someone who saw her and chose her and made her believe in impossible things. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Inside, in the shadows of the library, they sat together and watched the light change, and Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. 6 months later, Olivia defended her dissertation to a packed auditorium. Casimir sat in the back row, conspicuous in his dark suit and pale beauty, and watched with undisguised pride as she dismantled her committee's questions with the precision of a surgeon. They awarded her the doctorate with highest honors. That evening, Casimir took her to the garden, the real one, above ground. They'd timed it for sunset, that perfect window when the light was soft enough for him to bear and bright enough for her to see the flowers in full color. "I have something for you," he said as they walked between beds of roses that bloomed year-round through careful magic. "If it's another medieval manuscript, I'm running out of shelf space." "It's not a manuscript." He stopped beside a fountain and turned to face her. "It's a choice." Olivia's heart stuttered. "What kind of choice?" "The bond between us will fade over time. Another year, maybe 2, and you'll be completely human again. Free. You could leave, build a life in the sun, have everything you gave up when you chose this cure." His ice-blue eyes held hers. "Or you could choose to make the bond permanent, to transform fully, to stay with me not for years, but for centuries. You said you'd never turn anyone. I said I'd never turn anyone against their will, never out of fear or desperation. But if you chose it, freely and completely, knowing exactly what you'd gain and what you'd lose. He swallowed. I would turn you, Olivia, if that's what you wanted, if you were certain. Olivia's hands shook. You'd make me a vampire. I'd make you my equal, my partner. Not a king and his subject, but two people choosing each other for as long as existence allows. I'd never see sunlight again. No. I'd have to drink blood. Yes. I'd watch everyone I've ever known grow old and die. You would. It's a terrible price. I won't pretend otherwise. Olivia looked around the garden. The roses were perfect, their colors vivid in the dying light. The sky was turning that particular shade of purple that only existed at dusk. It was beautiful. It was everything she'd thought she'd lost, and it wasn't enough. Ask me again in a year, she said finally. When the bond is almost gone and I'm completely free to choose, ask me then, and I'll give you my answer. Casimir's expression cracked. Relief, love, understanding. That's fair. That's more than fair. But Casimir? Olivia stepped closer, close enough to feel the cold of him, the magnetic pull. I already know what my answer will be. Tell me anyway. Yes. She took his face in her hands and kissed him. 1,000 times yes. Today, tomorrow, a year from now, however long it takes for you to believe I'm choosing this with clear eyes, the answer is yes. He kissed her back, fierce and grateful, and Olivia felt the bond between them flare bright and sure. This was right. This was real, and whatever came next, they'd face it together. A year and 3 months after she fainted in his dark library, Olivia Brennan stood in that same space and made her choice. The court had assembled as witnesses, a formality for something this significant. Casimir stood before her, looking nervous for the first time since she'd known him. You're certain? He asked for the 1,000th time. Completely. Olivia's voice was steady. I've had 2 years to think about this. 2 years of being fully human, fully free. I've gone to conferences in daylight. I've eaten every food I thought I'd miss. I've reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I've lived, Casimir. Really lived. And at the end of every single day I come back here. To you. Because this is where I want to be. You'll lose so much. I'll gain more. An eternity with you. Time to finish every project I've ever dreamed of. A chance to see the world change and grow. That's not a sacrifice. That's a gift. Casimir's hands shook as he took hers. Then I offer you this transformation freely, with my blood and my vow. Will you accept? I will. The ritual was simple. A knife, a cup, a promise spoken in a language older than Latin. Casimir cut his wrist and let his blood flow dark and viscous into the waiting vessel. Then he offered it to her. Olivia took the cup and drank. The blood was cold going down, colder than anything she'd ever tasted. It spread through her like winter, freezing everything it touched. Her human heart beat faster, fighting the invasion, and she felt the exact moment it began to fail. Casimir caught her as she fell, lowering her carefully to the library floor. The same spot where she'd collapsed 2 years ago. Full circle. Stay with me, he whispered, and she heard the echo of that first night in his voice. Olivia, stay with me. She tried to answer but couldn't. Her heart stopped, and the world went dark. Dying, she'd learned, was cold and quiet and surprisingly gentle. Transforming was the opposite. It was fire and noise and violence, her body tearing itself apart and rebuilding from the inside out. She felt every cell change, every nerve rewire. Felt her human self burn away and something new rise from the ashes. When she opened her eyes, the world was different. Sharper, brighter. She could see individual dust motes floating in the air, could hear the whisper of fabric as the court members shifted in their seats, could smell the old leather of the books and something else, something rich and vital and calling. Blood. She could smell blood. Casimir's face swam into focus above her. Olivia, can you hear me? She nodded, not trusting her voice. How do you feel? Hungry. The word came out rough, unfamiliar. Her voice had changed too, deeper and colder. Relief flooded his expression. That's normal, we'll feed you. But first... He helped her sit up. Look at yourself. Olivia looked down at her hands. They were pale, white as snow, the veins standing out dark beneath the skin. Her nails had grown longer, stronger. She touched her face and felt the same cold smoothness, the same inhuman perfection. "I'm like you," she whispered. "You're like me." Casimir pulled her to her feet, steadying her. "Welcome to immortality, Olivia Corvinius." "Corvinius? If you'll have my name, it's traditional for turned vampires to take their sire's family name, but you don't have to. I want it." Olivia's new vampire strength made her bold. She pulled him close and kissed him, tasting the cold of him, the familiar comfort. "I want everything with you." The court applauded, a sound like thunder in her new sensitive ears. Celeste came forward with a crystal glass filled with dark liquid, and Olivia drank without hesitation. The blood was warm and rich and perfect, and it filled the gnawing hunger in her chest. "Better?" Casimir asked. "Better." Olivia set the glass aside and turned to face the court. "Thank you, all of you, for witnessing this, for supporting it." The amber-eyed vampire inclined her head. "You've given us hope, child, both of you. That love can exist between our kinds without exploitation. That transformation can be a choice, not a tragedy. That's worth celebrating." The formal ceremony dissolved into something warmer. The court members came forward to congratulate them, and Olivia shook hands with ancient vampires who'd walked the earth for millennia. They welcomed her as one of their own, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. Later, when the court had dispersed and they were alone again, Casimir took her to the garden. It was full night now, the stars bright overhead. Olivia could see every one of them, could name constellations she'd only read about. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It is." But Casimir was looking at her, not the sky. "You're beautiful. You were before, but now—" He touched her face, traced the new sharp lines of it. "You're magnificent. I'm different. You're still you, just more so." He pulled her close. "I was afraid, you know, that the transformation would change you, take away the warmth, the humanity. But it didn't. You're still you." Olivia rested her head on his chest. She couldn't hear a heartbeat, but she could feel the bond between them, stronger now, unbreakable. "Did you think I'd lose myself? I've seen it happen. People who go into transformation whole and come out hollow. I was terrified you'd be one of them." "I'm not hollow, I'm full. Fuller than I've ever been." She looked up at him. "You gave me this. A second chance. A third chance, really. First when you held my hand in the library. Again when you petitioned the court. And now this. How do I ever thank you for that? You don't. You live. You be happy. You stay with me and argue about manuscripts and roll your eyes when I'm being dramatic. That's all I want." "That's all?" "Well," a smile tugged at his mouth, "maybe a few other things. But we have eternity to figure those out." Olivia laughed, and the sound was clear and bright in the night air. "Eternity. I like the sound of that." "So do I." Casimir bent and kissed her, and Olivia sank into it, into him, into the perfect impossible reality of forever. They stood in the garden until dawn threatened, then retreated to the undervault. To the library, where everything had begun. Casimir pulled her down onto the floor beside the reading table, the same spot where he'd found her dying 2 years ago. "I used to hate this place," he said quietly. "It was a monument to grief, a way to hold on to someone I'd lost. But you changed that. You made it something living again. We could change it more, open it to scholars, make it a real resource, not just a private collection. I'd like that." He laced his fingers through hers. "We could build something together. A center for vampire-human cooperation, medical research, historical preservation, all the things we both care about." "That sounds perfect." Olivia rested her head on his shoulder. "We have time now, to build it right, to do it justice. We have all the time in the world." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the shadows shift as the artificial lights cycled through their programmed dawn. Olivia thought about everything that had led her here, the diagnosis, the desperate research, the petition to access a forbidden library, fainting in the dark with a book she shouldn't have touched, and Casimir, staying with her through it all, holding her hand, refusing to leave. "I love you," she said. "I don't think I say that enough. You show it every day, but I like hearing it anyway." Casimir kissed the top of her head. "I love you too. More than I thought I was capable of anymore. You gave that back to me, the ability to feel, to hope, to believe that forever might actually be something beautiful instead of something to endure. Forever will be beautiful, as long as we're together." "Together," Casimir agreed. "Always." Outside, the sun rose on a world that had changed. Inside, in the dark library, two vampires sat hand in hand and made plans for an eternity. They would build their research center, open the library to scholars, bridge the gap between vampire and human society. They would argue and laugh and discover new things together. And every night, for centuries to come, they would return to this spot. To the place where Olivia fainted in the dark and Casimir stayed until dawn, holding her cold hand. The place where everything changed, where love began. It wasn't the ending Olivia had expected when she first climbed those library stairs, her heart failing and her time running out. But it was better than any ending she could have imagined. It was a beginning, a promise, a forever she got to choose. And standing there in Casimir's arms, her new vampire heart steady and strong in her chest, Olivia Corvinius knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Not just to accept the cure, but to accept him, to accept this life, to accept everything that came with it. They had eternity now, and they would spend every moment of it together. That was worth any price, worth any sacrifice, worth everything. The story that began with a fainting scholar and a vampire king sitting in darkness ended with two immortals standing in light, holding hands and facing the future unafraid. They'd found each other in the most unlikely way, in the most unlikely place. And they'd chosen each other over and over until choice became certainty, until forever became real. And in a library that had once been a monument to grief, love bloomed eternal, as bright and impossible and perfect as the dawn they'd never stopped reaching for. Together, always, forever.